The Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to John.
Greetings from Springhouse Media at Daylesford Abbey. In this Holy Week of 2021, myself and Gareth Haynes, our music director here at the Abbey, want to do a little presentation on the celebration, the proclamation of the Passion, which is such a characteristic of Holy Week, both on Palm Sunday and on Good Friday. So let me introduce Gareth Haynes, who is our music director. I'll let him speak more about himself than I would do that, except to say that the quality of his work here at the Abbey has made us, I think, even able to celebrate in a more authentic and deeper way than we have in the past, for which I think we already have a pretty positive reputation. Gareth?
Thank you. So the discussion that we'll have, the presentation that I'll give, will focus on the Passion Gospel that we chant on Good Friday, that is the Passion according to St. John. So for some history, for some context, we don't know for sure when the practice of chanting the Passion Gospel began, but we know that by the 8th century it was the standard practice for a deacon to proclaim this gospel recto tono, or on a fixed tone, while the Jesus parts, the lines sung by the character of Jesus, were given a slightly more elaborated gospel tone with some inflections, cadences, and so forth. As the practice developed, it became common for the person intoning the gospel to elaborate a little bit in an improvisatory way on that recto tono, on that fixed tone. And as Gregorian chant notation developed, some of those improvisatory practices were sort of crystallized into what we recognize today as the gospel tone, the way that these things are sung.
Just so it's clear to our listeners, watchers, when you were talking about it recto tono with some, you're still talking about one person doing that?
Correct.
All right,
yeah.
Fine.
Right, so that's another thing, that eventually it became the practice that chant of the Passion Gospel would be divided between 3 singers.
Right.
You would have customarily and this is outdated now because the role of subdeacon has been suppressed, I believe.
Right.
But customarily you would have a priest singing the role of Jesus, a deacon singing the role of the chronista or narrator, John the Evangelist, and you would have a subdeacon singing the role of the turba or crowd, or the turba part covers the roles of
all individuals,
Pilate,
right.
Anybody that's not Jesus that has
right.
a speaking line.
Right.
So that's some discussion of the history. Now for a sort of musical theoretical breakdown of what's going on musically. The ambitus or compass of all of the singing in this Passion Gospel covers the octave of the 5th mode, or what we would call the Lydian mode today. Do, re, mi, fi, sol, la, ti, do, where that 4th scale degree, fi, is raised, da, 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 plus a few bottom lower notes, do, ti, la, sol, borrowed from the 6th mode, Hypo-Lydian, for Jesus to sing. The narrator has the vast majority of the singing of the Passion Gospel, and the narrator or chronista covers the range from the dominant or the 5th scale degree, which is also called the reciting tone, because that's the tone on which most of the chant happens. All of it's up here.
This was to fulfill what he had said. I have not lost any of those you gave me.
From that note, da, 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 down to the tonic or final. And that note is called the final because every time the narrator finishes a thought, he winds up down here, right?
Right.
So that's the narrator. And that's almost the only cadence that you're going to hear from the narrator, is that da-da-dee-dum, because the narrator never gets to ask a question. There is another cadence that we'll get to in a moment. Now, the turba, Pilate, the Jews, etc., covers the range from the dominant up to the upper tonic. And so his reciting tone is up here, and then he comes down to the final. His final is here, right? And Pilate and some of the others do get to ask some questions. So there is that difference between a declarative or a command.
Crucify him! Crucify him!
And a question.
Pilate said to him,
What is truth?
So you can tell, you pointed out the last time we chatted about this actually, you can tell, even if you're listening to the Passion Gospel being chanted in a foreign language, you can still tell when somebody's stating something or when they're asking a question. So that's the turba, the narrator. Jesus occupies a lower compass that overlaps with the narrator in terms of range. So Jesus occupies a range that overlaps a fair amount with the range that the narrator occupies. Jesus covers from the fourth degree of that Lydian mode, da 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 da, down to do, and then down a little farther. Those few extra notes that are borrowed from the Hypolydian. But there is one alteration that's made to Jesus' parts, and I think this came about a little bit later as this thing was developing, because if Jesus doesn't alter the Lydian mode when he sings it, you'll wind up with phrases like, "Yea, I say to you that da-da-da-dum, da-dum." That interval is called a tritone, because there are three notes in between. 1, 2, 3. That tritone, medieval musicologists didn't like the tritone. They called it the devil's interval because it was very dissonant. So Jesus, instead of singing that raised degree, lowers it. Da 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 da, do re mi fa mi re do. And so Jesus' compass is from that lowered fourth degree down a couple of tones below the tonic of the scale. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that the narrator has two different types of cadences. The narrator either states that something has happened, or introduces the turba. Pilate said to him, or he lowers that scale degree as he's about to introduce that Jesus is about to speak. So usually the narrator will chug along, da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, Pilate answered. But if Jesus is about to speak, the narrator, da-da-da-da-dum, Jesus answered. So it sort of prepares musically for that Jesus is about to speak.
Jesus answered him,
You would have no power over me if it had not been given to you from above.
So that's a musical overview of the bulk of the Passion Gospel. Now, in the chanting of the Passion according to St. John on Good Friday, something very special happens right at the end. And that is that the narrator, for about the last page of the music, switches over to what's called the Planctus Tone. So the narrator has been singing in this very nicely formulated cadential format, but then after they will look upon him whom they have pierced, he switches to the Planctus Tone as he describes Joseph of Arimathea retrieving the body of Jesus, and Joseph and Nicodemus embalming the body and preparing it for burial.
And what does Planctus mean?
Well, Planctus, the Latin, comes from the infinitive root plangere, to strike, or to beat one's breast, and by extension to lament.
Gotcha.
And so that planctus or plangere is the root of the modern words complaint or plaintive.
All right. So that comes in to the music once Jesus has died.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. Now, the word planctus also applies to a medieval literary genre. These songs, these poems, dirges or laments, usually on the death of some very famous or significant person. Actually, the earliest planctus that we have on record, I believe, is on the death of Charlemagne.
Ah.
But there are also plancti in the courtly love tradition, so this woman loves me, or I love this woman, but she doesn't love me back, and oh, woe is me. So that's the medieval origin of the planctus idea. And I think, if I had to guess, I think that, and I'm getting out on a limb here because I could not find this information in my research. I couldn't find how the Planctus tone worked its way into the gospel chanting. But if it was the practice commonly in medieval Europe to improvise and to elaborate on the gospel intonation, and there was also this medieval song and literary genre that coexisted, my guess would be that that's how the Planctus tone worked its way into the gospel, was dirge-like elaboration.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So the Planctus tone is very melismatic. It's very beautiful, and extremely expressive, and I think quite effective in the chanting at the end of the Passion Gospel.
They took the body of Jesus and bound it with burial cloths along with the spices, according to the Jewish burial custom. Now, in the place where he had been crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb, in which no one had yet been buried. So they laid Jesus there because of the Jewish preparation day, for the tomb was close by. The Gospel of the Lord.
Well, I asked the question about the single proclaimer of the Passion, and I really would hold that is a better ideal. That it is a narrative, and that what happened in the moving to 3, which I don't think is a bad thing. It opened up the door to begin thinking that what we've moved into is a sort of passion play about the past, but so that one could see one could see that the passion could be acted out. But I think that the affective dimensions of the Passion happen in what you're describing about the music. In other words, that the music is not all, as we've said before, if you didn't understand a word, you would know when a question was being asked. You would know from the shape of the music. And I think that brings the force, the positive affective elements get communicated, even if you don't necessarily understand the words. But of course, now we are able to do that. Have both the music and the text as we understand it. My guess is that the Planctus, this is just a guess, is that you're saying that was already a musical form in the culture.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So that just as the facility that you have for that, I suspect that some cantor just thought, not strangely at all, Jesus has died. We mourn, and so just naturally moved into that mode of music. And obviously, people found it. Yeah, this works, and so it comes down to us in the tradition.
I think that's quite likely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, so to continue a little bit, I think,
Good.
down the line of thought that you were starting, the chanting of the Passion Gospel makes it so that it's a lot more difficult for us to directly insert our emotional interpretations into what's
Right.
going on. You could have a person who, if they're just reading the Passion Gospel, they might really act out what they're saying.
Right.
One of the maids said to Peter, "Are you really not one of the followers of Jesus Christ?" Peter said, "I'm not." And that would be distracting and personal and liturgically misguided. But when we chant the Passion Gospel, since we're not able to do that, rather than acting out a play about the past, we're participating in something that's happening now.
Exactly.
And we're, I think, to a certain extent, submitting or subsuming ourselves, submitting ourselves to a higher idea, or subsuming ourselves in the text, rather than putting ourselves in front of it. So I think it's a very, there's an immediacy about it, there's a humility to it. I think it's a deeply important ritual practice.
Yeah. I think that for most people that it would be counterintuitive, because that we would be in search of and have found and supporting a form of music that is less emotionally expressive than what we might do in some other way. Because for me, it's similar to the situation of the difference between a costume and uniform. So uniform tells me who I am, or this is a uniform, tells me and other people that today I am an Oberteam. If I get dressed as Abraham Lincoln, it says that's a costume and it's about something in the past. And that's the danger, I think, of that if we would start to manipulate in the liturgies of Holy Week musical forms that start leading us towards thinking, we're in a passion play, rather than the proclamation of a narrative. Yeah.
I think that's very well said. I think it also, the music that's used for the chanting of the Passion Gospel and the reason that it's used, I think, is applicable to other areas of music as well, more broadly. I think music isn't really about, or it shouldn't be about, self-expression, even though that's kind of what everybody says all the time. I'm expressing myself through this. Yeah. Music isn't about self-expression. It should be about the expression of abstract universal truths. That's what you find in the music of Bach or Beethoven.
Yes.
Is this
Yes.
it's not about, how I was feeling at the time. It's about an abstract idea.
Yeah. Augustine encountered that because he started to realize that he was getting so attracted by the music that he was losing his focus on the word. That in the liturgy, the music is serving the proclamation of the word. It is not serving my emotional expression, or even in the beauty of the music, the complexity of the music, making it more difficult to engage the word. Yeah. So maybe I might say something simply about the fact of, especially if you've been following the presentations this Lent of 2021 on the rite for the Christian initiation of adults, the Gospels that are used are Gospels that directly pertain to baptism. So the Jesus and the woman at the well, that this life-giving water that through the water of baptism, this life water springs from us, that the man born blind, that we are enlightened so that through baptism we see in a new way, the raising of Lazarus, that baptism is really a new creation. So here we are, we've just celebrated Palm Sunday, and one might think, well, there must be another Johannine gospel that has this initiatory sense. My own reflection on this, and this is not, I've not taken this from some official Vatican or theologian, is that what we're seeing on Palm Sunday is that on the following Saturday, Sunday, we will be baptized, and what baptism is doing, and it's the epistle, the reading in the celebration of the Eucharist in the Vigil, is that we will go down with Christ into death, that we might rise up with him into glory. So the Passion Gospel, we might say, is the ultimate baptismal gospel. It's the fact that what we learn, what a good athlete or a good teacher or someone who has worked hard at music learns, that there is a death, a dying, a discipline that leads to the glory of being a great athlete or professor or a musician. So now there is a difference since the Missal of 1970 in the Roman Catholic Church. In the practice for the last centuries before that, one gospel, one of the three synoptic gospels would be read on Palm Sunday, and then two others in the course of the week. But always John's gospel is proclaimed on Good Friday, because Good Friday, again, is not, I hate to say that, it is not were you there when they crucified my Lord. The Passion event on Good Friday is the lifting up of the cross as the trophy of God's victory over sin. And that's what we see, the Gospel of John. Jesus is not the victim in the Passion. He's basically running the show. And even the fact that in John's Gospel, the church is born from the side of Christ as the blood and water flows forth. So there is a difference simply in the liturgies in the Roman Catholic Church since 1970, that Mark is read on one year on Palm Sunday, Matthew on the second year on Palm Sunday, Luke on the third Palm Sunday, because we're on a 3-year cycle. John is always read on Good Friday, this sense of the strongest sense that Jesus is glorified through his passion into his resurrection. We hope that this presentation brings you to a deeper preparation and understanding of the Good Friday within the setting of the Triduum, that it enables you to integrate more into your spiritual life the death of Christ, so that with the body of Christ in the Easter Vigil, in the celebration of Easter, you come into this new creation. And we join you in that prayer.